State of Decay. If you didn't play it, it was a janky as hell zombie survival game that surprised many others, myself included, because underneath those performance issues and the bugs was a really interesting sandbox in which you slowly built up a community of survivors, each with their own unique personalities and traits. Eventually, each of these characters could become playable too, and as you use them to go out foraging or complete a mission, or whatever it may be, they could wind up getting killed, permanently, losing all their skills and gear in the process. It was brutal. This game showed so much promise, but you got the sense that State of Decay probably needed a bigger team and a bigger budget to truly reach its full potential. Well, here we are, 4 years later, and we've now seen its sequel in action at this year's E3. It's a Microsoft exclusive, releasing next year on the Xbox One and PC, and interestingly, it does now have both a bigger team and a bigger budget. So, after watching a short demo of the game at this year's show, what can I tell you about it? What is different this time around? Here's 5 brand new things you could expect from State of Decay 2. The big one, I think, is the introduction of co-op multiplayer. Online only, not local. This is exciting. Fans have been asking for this in State of Decay right from the get-go, and the developers themselves, Undead Labs, have long talked about multiplayer being an important part of their vision for the zombie survival genre. Here's how it's going to work. So you can invite up to 3 friends to your game and they'll jump straight in with one of their own characters from their own campaigns, and these characters will gain XP and loot that they can take back to that save file. But there is a trade-off. Yes, they can also die as well, permanently, as in if they die in your game, that character won't come back in that player's own save file. Oh, Undead Labs, you wonderful, horrible gits. State of Decay was always about long-lasting consequence, and I think it's probably only right this translates to its multiplayer as well. Just, yeah, be careful with that, I guess. Quick side note here, when you do invite your friends, it won't scale the difficulty as a default, but the developers were quick to point out that 4 players in a single game are likely to make loads of noise. And as we all know, noise attracts zombies, and zombies are bad, which means to some extent, this will make things more difficult. As well as inviting people from your friends list, you can also invite random players into your world using an in-game flare gun. This will immediately summon someone who's volunteered to help other players with their games, similar in a way to the Soul series. But these players, just like your friends, are taking a big risk by helping you, as their characters with all their gear and experience and emotional value can be lost forever. I think this sounds so good. I'm so glad they did it. They could have done the co-op in a much more straightforward way, and it would have been less exciting. Good on you, Undead Labs. Moving on, the character system in State of Decay 2 promises to expand on that of the first game by quite a bit, with more than 1,000 unique character traits, we're told. I didn't know there were 1,000 unique character traits, but apparently there are, and they range from the really big important stuff like snoring, which reduces the morale of everyone in your camp by 3 points, because snoring is, let's face it, the fucking worst, to the profession that the character had prior to the world being overtaken by the Walking Dead. One of these, for example, is Groundskeeper, which is now a requirement if you intend to build a farm in your settlement. In the gameplay we saw, only one character in the whole group had that trait, which meant if they died, the player wouldn't have been able to build one, which is a fairly big deal and means you'll probably want to protect certain characters until you've at least got the right facilities out of them. That sounds heartless, but I'm just being practical here. Building requirements make monsters of us all in the end. Speaking of buildings, there's a new game mechanic being introduced here called Noise. This is a meter you'll see fill up as you bring more and more survivors into your settlement, and especially so when you're building something. If this meter gets too high, as it did in the demo I watched, when the players started quite loudly building their farm, a zombie siege is triggered. This looks to be the equivalent of several zombie hordes from the first game attacking your settlement from different entrances and over the course of multiple waves, with all of your survivors desperately trying to fend them off. It was pretty intense, and a couple of characters almost lost their lives in the process, which means essentially building things in your settlement is now a risk. Sure, you'll want the farm for your extra food supply, but is it worth losing survivors over? That's the question you now need to ask. It's not clear whether you can do anything to mitigate the noise you're making, although I suspect there will be. Otherwise, it looks like you'll be forced to deal with a lot of sieges during your playthrough. Map size, everyone likes map size. So State of Decay 2, as you might have hoped, is quite a bit bigger than its prequel. Undead Labs told me it'll include 3 different maps that are each individually around the size of the entire original game. As you complete the story missions themselves, which the developers claim will be more closely tied to the simulation side of State of Decay 2, you'll progress through each of these locations. We don't know yet if you can hop back and forth between them at your leisure, or if you're being forced to escape them, and in doing so, you lose the option to return at a later point. Who knows? But yes, the map is bigger, 3 times bigger, in fact. And finally, it turns out having a much larger team, plenty of time in development, a new generation of hardware, and the full backing of Microsoft means you can probably address the performance issues that plagued your first game quite nicely. I watched a 15-minute demo of State of Decay 2 running on the PC, including some 2-player co-op, and I'm pleased to say it ran very, very smoothly. Even during the zombie sieges that I witnessed, there was no visible drop in frame rate, which was a relief. And yeah, I also asked about the team's plans for the Xbox One X, if you're thinking about making that jump, and was told they will be aiming for 4K resolution and HDR support, and it'll also allow them to scale up the game a little bit as well, meaning smaller touches like denser vegetation, if that's what you're into. But yes, all in all, State of Decay 2 sounds like a very decent sequel. It's the same core idea, but one that's hopefully benefiting from a few additional years of refinement. As a fan of the original game, that also spent a lot of time trying to explain why it was so interesting despite its flaws, I'm pretty psyched to see what they've managed here. No firm release date as of recording this video, but we're expecting to get our hands on with this game early next year. So yeah, keep on polishing, Undead Labs. Make it really good. We'll wait. If you enjoyed this video, please do give it a like on YouTube because that's nice, and here are some other things that we did during E3 if you'd like to give them a watch. I would particularly recommend the awards video we did when we were out there because it involves us hugging the creative director of Mario Rabbids, who seems a very, very nice man. Alright, catch you next time.